Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we're talking about a very special Rolex Sea-Dweller, reference 16600, also known as the Sommozzatori Polizia di Stato. The Sommozzatori Sea-Dwellers were used to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Sommozzatori, and what the Sommozzatori is basically the Italian police diving unit. So what's interesting is the watch bears an octopus on the dial located at the 9 o'clock position, and then it is basically the logo of the Italian Sommozzatori. What's interesting about the watch itself is that it is a collaboration between Rolex and the police of Italy, and to have a watch that is of this era that has co-branding or a logo on the dial is quite rare. So obviously there's Tiffany dials and there's other logo dials that we've seen with Rolex throughout the history of Rolex, more commonly seen in like the 70s, 80s, maybe even as early as the late 60s. But to have something from the year 2008 bear a logo or something on the dial for Rolex is very interesting, and also, really, really rare. So the watch was created to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Italy's diving corps, and the Italian state police asked Rolex to produce this rare special edition. One of the last real examples, as we were talking about, of a cooperation between Rolex and a police or military organization. So it is said that 78 pieces were made in total, and that only 28 of the 78 that were made actually bear the certification number of the diver that it was given to. So those examples are a little bit more rare, just because there's only 28 out of the 78 that bear the diver certification number and the first and last name. The watch was only made in 2008, and what's kind of unique about the reference as a whole is the serial numbers are pretty close in number, actually. So, most of them will start with a V31 serial number. Obviously, if you're outside of that range, then the watch could be, questionable. And then additionally, on the back of the watch, we have a laser engraving that commemorates the 50th anniversary of the Sommozzatori from 1958 to 2008. So very cool and interesting watch. I think, the other cool thing about the watch is that it has an octopus on the dial of a Sea-Dweller. The Sommozzatori's logo is actually an octopus with its, arms out, and then you have the logo that kind of surrounds the octopus. So really, really interesting. I actually have a really great book in front of me. It's volume 1 of the Mondani Rolex Submariner Sea-Dweller, and it's in a 2-part set. And the Mondani family's done a great job of putting together a bit of a historical reference for these watches, but they also highlight the watches in their book. And so the true reference is a 16600T, and then, like I said, the reference range is V31 for the serial range, rather, for the 16600T. Really, really kind of cool watch. This is an example of one that was sold with the engraving on the back, and we'll provide some close-ups so you can see not only the octopus, or the Polipetto, I think is the Italian word. Sorry to all my Italian friends if I'm butchering that, but basically that means small octopus, which is part of their logo. This example came to us from one of our viewers, and he asked if I wanted to review it and take a closer look at the watch. There have been a few of these watches that have surfaced that, of course, have a non-original logo. This one, in fact, we did authenticate, and we looked at things that make this an original. We looked very closely at the engravings, we looked at the card, we looked at the serial numbers. Additionally, we did a very close inspection of the octopus logo on the dial to verify its authenticity, and it is a very cool and fine example. It's one of the only ones that I've actually ever seen in the flesh. I've seen, of course, other examples in catalogs and in books and things like that, but this is the only one that I've ever seen in the flesh. So I'm really honored to share this with you guys, because I think it makes for a interesting piece of horological history, and I think it's kind of a nice example to talk about, because again, it is one of the last Rolex models that bears a co-branded dial. So it's kind of at the end of when Rolex was doing anything commemorative or custom order on the actual dials of their watches, which is really interesting. This specific example remains unpolished. It's a very clean and kind of nice example from a presentation perspective. It's really, really nice on the wrist. There's something about having that octopus at the 9 o'clock that's kind of cool. It seems to balance kind of the symmetry of the dial, so to speak, because there's a date window at the 3 o'clock, and having something at the 9 o'clock is kind of a nice balance, and it's cool. I think having an octopus as your logo and having that on the dial of the Sea-Dweller makes sense. So very interesting watch, and very, very cool. Most of these watches, matter of fact, I don't know of one that doesn't retain all of its books and papers and all that kind of stuff. So this one is a full set example, and we can kind of go through it, but you've got your standard, Rolex presentation box that accompanies this example. So your basic Rolex presentation box. This one has the wax chronometer seal, your polishing cloth, your instruction booklets here. So that's kind of cool. And then the other really cool thing about the Sea-Dwellers of this era is that Rolex actually did provide some nice accessories that accompanied the 16600. So we've got like this green leather Rolex wallet, which is really, really nice. And then we've got, this is pretty cool. This is in Italian, of course, but we've got the manual here and the guarantee. We've got our card, which bears a serial number. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out as well is that one other element that we use to authenticate the watch is all of the cards were filled out at the same time, and whoever was writing out these cards has a very distinctive signature within their handwriting. So it's always December and then of 2008, because the watch is obviously from 2008. But what's interesting is the 2s and the 8s in the 2008, and the D and the C's are very distinctive. So another thing, again, when we're authenticating things like this, I look at things like that. I look at signature characteristics. I'm looking at lume profile under ultraviolet light, and looking at the consistencies of those things. I'm looking at case back engravings and looking for, in some cases, even the flaws in that stuff. I'm trying to find those, key markers, if that makes sense, to authenticate stuff like this. And the natural flaws in things are, in many cases, are the actual marker. So really interesting. One other thing too, I don't have an ultraviolet light here. Hey, Ashley? Can you grab me an ultraviolet light? This is gonna make for some great editing. Our editor is actually here with us today. So the man, the myth, the legend, that's David.
Oh.
What the heck, David? What kind of hat is that?
Trash hat.
It would be somewhat easy to, I guess, dupe or place a reproduction, or to create a reproduction for something like this. So again, when I'm asked to authenticate things like this, I'm looking at the finest details. In many cases, this kind of being a little bit more of the exception, I'm leveraging my base of experience and understanding of the subject matter. So for example, when we're authenticating a Paul Newman, for example, I'm looking at, text details and fonts and engravings and serial numbers and that kind of stuff, but I'm using kind of my perspective of experience, having looked at that subject matter for a long time and over and over and over and over again, to really understand kind of each idiosyncrasy that makes those things what they are. In some cases though, there's also a more technical form of validation. So in this case, for example, if you look at the Rolex card, it looks like a seemingly normal Rolex card. It's got this, you know, the printed number on it. It's got the printed original owner's name on the back. And then there's the handwriting, obviously, that I use to authenticate the card, just the card, not the watch, but just the card itself. But what's interesting is, not a lot of people know this, but Rolex, I'm not sure if we can get this, Nick, but if you zoom in on the card itself, Rolex actually has an ultraviolet or a holographic band of what we would call a Rolex Jubilee script on the back of the card. So not a lot of people actually know that, and without the naked eye, you can't even see that. So if you hit it with ultraviolet light, that actually shows up behind the card. And then the other nice thing about like this little like presentation packet that was created by Rolex is they have this little spring bar tool. So it's a Rolex Reference 2100 tool that offers a spring bar pusher on one side and then a screwdriver on the other so that you can actually manipulate and remove the links on the bracelet. So that's kind of cool. That always came with the 16600 series. And then the other thing that I really love is there's actually a diving decompression table that accompanied all Sea-Dwellers out of its era. So kind of a nice little touch, and it's something that sometimes gets lost. You actually have like this little Velcro pouch here too, which holds like your accessories, so you could put like your hang tag or your extra links. One other kind of unique little feature about the 16600 is that there were two diver's extensions offered with the watch. So you have this diver's extension here, which is the short version, and then you actually have the long version. And one interesting thing too, I keep saying interesting, but I think it is interesting, so that's why I keep saying it. But one unique feature of the more modern Rolex Sea-Dweller bracelets is that they actually have kind of a different flip lock type of, I guess, design. So there's like a little circle on the link, and then when you press that circle in the link, basically it pops open, if I can do it here, but it basically pops that like notched groove out so that you can then open up and operate the diver's extension. And this one currently has the long diver's extension. So obviously if you were wearing a dry suit or something like that, the longer diver's extension would be a little bit nicer to, you know, fit over a thicker, you know, type of suit. But they actually did provide both of them with the 16600, and that was kind of a standard offering for the reference range in this era and time. In any case, that's pretty much it. I'll provide a link in the description below. We might, you know, take some photos of this and put it on the site so that you can take a look at this watch in closer detail. And I think it's also important to talk about these things because you know, there's not a lot of information out there on the reference itself. And I think having something that kind of highlights the reference and talks about it and provides a little bit of a historical background aids and yields learning and development and a reference point for the watch community. So that's the reason why we wanted to feature this and talk about it on the channel. So as always, guys, we are here to help. So if you have any watch related questions, or if you're looking at something and you're unsure about it, feel free to drop us a line, info@craftandtailor.com. Here and happy to help. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And for the latest updates, be sure to follow us on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you in the next one.